Welcome to today's episode of the Ceres podcast. Can you believe that this is episode 150? When we first started, it was a bit of an industry hobby, a bit of a side gig, let's say. But we have loads of great plans coming. It's really weird talking about the great plans because they sort of take time to kick in, but they're in motion and they will come soon. Hopefully, we can tell you what they are in May. Joining us on today's episode of the Ceres podcast is Jamie Bird. Jamie is a pivotal member of the long-standing East Midlands family legacy, Bird's Bakery. Jamie brings a rich history and deep understanding of traditional values as his role as Director of Strategy. Bird's Bakery was established in 1919 by three brothers, Reginald, Thomas and Frank Bird. It has always adhered to the principles of freshness and quality. Each brother brought a unique set of skills to the table. With backgrounds in baking, butchering and confectionery, they laid the foundation for a business that prides itself on products that are fresh as a daisy. Jamie, who has an impressive background in commercial real estate, recently returned to the Midlands to contribute to the family business. His expertise in strategy is a significant asset as Bird's Bakery continues to cherish the time-honoured recipes and practice passed down through the generations, ensuring that each product is made from scratch and it meets the highest standards of excellence. Today's episode is brought to you by the Ceres Deep Fryer Cleaner. Are you ready to supercharge your deep fryers? Introducing the Deep Fryer Cleaner, the ultimate solution to grease, grime and stubborn carbon buildup. This powerful, non-caustic cleaner is designed to keep your fryers in the best condition, whether it's efficient chip shop fryer, a table-top fryer, a solo unit that tucks in on the corner, or even a donut fryer. Ceres Deep Fryer Cleaner gets the job done. Say goodbye to stubborn baked on carbon and polymerization as the Ceres Deep Fry Cleaner swiftly eliminates all of that, saving you valuable time. Additionally, it reduces the necessity for strenuous scrubbing and it minimizes employee exposure to hot surfaces. Add years of life to your fryers, increase oil life, increase oil recovery time, remove carbon, save gas and electricity. What's not to like? And don't just take my word for it. Here's a verified review from our website from a chap called Raphael. This is a game-changing product. Over the years, I've tried various ways of cleaning out my fryers and nothing has come close to this, end quote. So, to get your Ceres Deep Fryer Cleaner, visit www.ceres.shop for next day free mainland UK delivery. We also ship to Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, all the British Isles and numerous European countries. So don't settle for less. Choose Ceres Deep Fryer Cleaner for fryers that you can truly be proud of. Do you want to stay connected to all things Ceres? Follow us on social media to catch our latest updates. Better yet, for direct updates direct to your inbox, sign up to our mailing list and that's where you get the offers too. You'll find the link in our episode show notes. And if you're enjoying this podcast, why not share it with friends or shout it out on social media? Chances are, if you found value in this episode, then others in the industry would like it too. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you take a moment to leave us a review on your favourite podcast player. Your feedback helps us grow and it also helps us improve, so let us know however it goes. Thanks for listening. We're really excited to hear more about Jamie's journey, the insights from his career and vision for Bird's Bakery in the future. Let's dive in. Jamie, welcome to the Ceres podcast.
Hello, how are we?
I'm great, mate. I'm really excited about this episode, genuinely, because we've been looking forward to this for a while. And when you said to me, I think, was it January when we booked this thing? I think it was.
Yeah.
And you said to me, how about the weekend after Good Friday? And I thought, okay, that seems like a long way away. But in actual fact, it wasn't that long away because this year is flying. But also, I realised that I needed a lot more prep time with a subject like yourself because the company Bird's Bakery, as you're about to tell us, has been around a long time. And I actually don't think one episode is going to do your company justice. But I think one of the interesting things about Bird's Bakery, and you're going to be so used to this, like what I'm about to tell you is not going to surprise you, but everyone I've spoken to from Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, Staffordshire, all have a nostalgic memory about going to a Bird's Bakery, whether it's walking past, going in, whether it's eating, something from inside. My good friend Kelly, who now lives in Exmouth, she was from Burton-on-Trent, and I messaged her the other day, and I just said to her, "You got any memories of Birds in Burton-on-Trent?" And oh my god, I was not expecting that. And it probably helps the fact that she lives away, so probably misses it more so now. But it was just like bing, 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 and then she sends me an audio, and she was like, "Stel, you have no idea how important this is to my history." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So you must be sort of used to that to some degree.
We are, yeah. Well, firstly, thank you for having us. When we said so long, it took me as long to prep for this as well. And I'm sure we'll fit it all into an hour. Well, we'll try to. But yeah, very, very used to that. And it's something, so my background, obviously, Jamie Bird, I am part of the Bird family, joined the business 15 months ago, November 22. And one thing that I had heard way before I started is, I remember when, and then it is mum, dad, granddad, uncle, brother, sister, whatever, took them to Birds for the first time. And then they've always got that nostalgia, which is brilliant. And lots of things we're going to cover today, I'll try not to bore you straight away, is part of the rebrand was to really encompass that and be able to share customers' stories with other customers and our staff alike, because we employ close to 800 staff. So many of them have got a lot of memories and stories to tell, as we like to call them.
No, it's an amazing story. And obviously, I think I mentioned before, before we started press record, I've been to a few Birds, and I'm not from those areas. I'm just outside in Warwickshire. And I don't know, I just found it quite fascinating that there's something quite interesting about this business, that they're everywhere in Derbyshire, Derbyshire, Staffordshire, Nottinghamshire. There's a couple of outposts that I've noticed. And I'm going to ask you more about that shortly. But it just, again, when a company's been going as long as they have, there's got to be a good story behind it, especially when the name of the business still has people with that name in the business too. So I'm really looking forward to this. So tell us a little bit about the founding of Birds and bring us up to the present period. And I'm sure take as much time as you want. Don't rush this.
I told you I needed to do my homework. Well, luckily we've recently gone through the rebrand, so I just spend a lot of time researching and doing my own fact finding about the business. As well as I was brought up with the surname Bird. I'm generation 4 and my father was generation 3. So trying to learn about his grandfather and his great-great-grandfather, it just takes a little bit of time. So we are a family business. We're still owned by the Bird family. There are two sides of that, and that's my dad, who's sadly no longer with us, and his brother, Patrick, who is also no longer with us, but they're two wives. So Leslie, to me, at work is Leslie, but at home she is mum, and Linda. So they're the 50-50 joint shareholders or owners of the company. So the business was founded in 1919, and just out of coincidence, it's interesting that Betty's was also founded in 1919. There you go. We have now got 61 shops across the East Midlands. So furthest north is Matlock, to the east is Newark, to the south is Anstey, so the tip of Leicestershire, and to the west is Lichfield, Uttoxeter. So we were founded by three brothers who were returning from World War One, and their names were Thomas, Reginald, and Frank. And we have this line that we use now, which is baker, butcher, and chocolatier. And that was from our three founding brothers, as one was a baker, one was a butcher, and one was a confectioner, so worked with chocolate. And they're the three skill sets that we still have today, and three that we're very proud of still. So that was 1919. So in 1927, We bought our third shop, which was on St James's Street, which is probably one of our most famous shops. We no longer have that shop, but it was our flagship for many, many years. A fun fact that when we opened that store, it was one of the first stores, or I got told the first store, but I can't say if this is true or not, to use refrigeration for cream cakes. And that is a product that that is our USP in today's day and age. And now we have a lot of refrigeration in our stores.
I was going to say, I couldn't imagine eating a cream cake without refrigeration today.
Yeah, no, it takes us some thought around how we refrigerate from, the big fridges where they're made, where the guys and girls make them in the bakery to get it to the store, to having them in the cabinets, to having space in the back of shops for more cakes as we get through them through the day. So that's 1927. So in 1951, Reginald Jr., who was Thomas's eldest son, and Paul, who was my grandfather, took charge of the business. Both had slightly different opinions on which way they wanted to take the business. Reginald Jr. was very much steady Eddie, was very happy with how the business was evolving naturally, slower progression, whereas Paul had much bigger plans to grow the business much, much quicker and much faster. I think at this time we still had 3 to 5 shops. So in the 60s, or 1960 to be precise, Paul bought Reginald Jr. out. And by 1971, we had 12 shops. This then grew quite significantly. So in 1975, we bought, or the business, which was run by Paul at the time, bought a bakery called Houghton Street in Nottingham, and that's when we had 2 bakeries. So until about the 1990s, we operated 2 bakeries, one in Derby, one in Nottingham. With this purchase of Houghton Bakery, we took over their 8 shops, so that took us to a shop count of 20. In 1991, Paul passed away, and Nicholas, my father, and Patrick, his brother, took over the business. And at this stage, we had 45 shops. So over that period of time, we took on grew this retail estate quite significantly. And that's something that both Nicholas and Patrick wanted to do further. So by the 2000s, or by the millennium, we got up to 50 shops. And really to today, we are at 61. So we've grown that further. A lot of that, as we're, a principle we sort of live by is fresh as a daisy promise, which is about delivering fresh cream cakes of the highest quality every day. So one of the elements we always have to think about when we're looking at new sites is delivery time from the bakery. So today we have our one bakery at Ascot Drive, which we used to make all our products every day and delivered every day, every night, and then sent out every morning. So with dry times such as Newark, we have to be conscious that if we want to open at 7:38, the driver has to be at the shop by 5-ish to allow the shop staff to be able to prep the shop and have it ready for opening. So that's a little bit about who we are and how we got to where we are today.
Are there still lots of relatives that work within the business today?
So there are. So Leslie is the CEO of the company. So she took over in about 2000. I know this. She took over the week before we went into COVID.
Okay.
So that was a fun time for her to take over.
Oh God, imagine that.
So she's run a very steady ship given all the turbulence in the wider market. So she runs the business on a day-to-day and, of course, is a 50% shareholder. Linda, she is not involved in the day-to-day, but is an active board member. So is involved in most big decisions that will be involved in every big decision that we make.
Yeah.
I then have 2 younger brothers. So I'm the oldest of 3. Middle brother, Tim, he's involved in the business. He is a senior project manager. So he looks after a whole variety of projects. So he has, over the last couple of years, been led the investment into our new donut fryer. So when I talk to mates or he talks to mates, telling them a little bit about what we do, it's quite fun and exciting. But he also did the implementation of Just Eat and Uber Eats within the shops, which was an enormous task, because a lot of it is, the staff engagement side of things, getting them on board with a different way of working, a different point of sale. And that's now proving to be hugely successful. And then my youngest brother, Alex, he lives and works down in London. He works in commercial real estate, but we have a family. Well, the board consists of family members as well, of which he is one. So like with others, he will be involved in some of the big decision making. But he's also because he's based down in London, we send him to go and look at lots of different bakeries to see what they're up to. We know, part of our rebrand is really focused on enhancing that in-store experience. And, seeing some of the bakeries in London and what they do is phenomenal. So we're trying to pinch bits and pieces here and there.
When it comes to like that sort of development, how do you know, well, how can you quickly weed out whether it's a fad? Because London has this, a lot of these, what's the latest one? I think it's like a croissant that's a square or something, or a croissant muffin. And I'm not knocking it. I'm just trying to say that it may be a fad, and it probably is. Like, how can you weed that out? Because you don't really, I guess, a company like Birds doesn't really jump onto fads. Is that right? Or
no, you're right. It's really interesting. So I've recently written a book that's for internal eyes only, but it's for all our staff essentially, and tells them a little bit about who we are, what we do. And one of the chapters focuses on competition. Now, I must admit, this isn't a 800-page J.K. Rowling novel, but it sort of gives a snapshot as to what I the family think about looking at competition. And it's important that we do, but it's also important that we stick to what we're good at. So whilst we're looking at a lot of product development, innovations around some technology, a lot of it goes back to what we're good at and making sure that we're able to deliver a quality product that we are happy with consistently.
Yeah. And do you still, so you don't have any other bakeries, you service all of the stores from Ascot Drive in Derby?
That's right, yeah.
So, and I guess, with the outpost that you've got, you mentioned Tamworth, you talked Newark-on-Trent, do you see yourselves filling the gaps in between, or do you see yourselves that they were there because an excellent site came up?
So a lot of those sites are not, when I say historic, it doesn't mean we're going away from them, but we've had them for a very long time. In terms of the sort of growth of the retail estate, there's a lot of infill locations that we're continuing to look at, but there's a lot of micro relocations that we would still consider. So if I took Ashby de la Zouch as an example, so it's the store that we relaunched our new brand work with, our new store concept. That's a prime example where we've essentially moved 5 shops down the high street. It's a really popular high street. It's a really picturesque, beautiful market town. But our old property wasn't necessarily fit for purpose for the concept that we want. So a lot of what we're trying to get to is having that ability for customers to come in, get their products and leave, but also come in and get their products and sit, have a coffee, enjoy. And what we've tried to create there is different types of seating. So someone who might want to, you or I might want to go and work in the shop. So there's some, cozier, quieter space at the back. But there's also the window seats for those who like to people watch and watch the world go by.
Like me.
Likewise.
so when designing a new store, obviously I think it's pertinent to ask this because you've been through this process. How do you, if you look at the likes of Starbucks, they want people to sit in there all day. They want them to work from there. I was in a Starbucks in, can't remember what it was recently. I can't remember where it was, but I remember I was on the top level and I looked around on the long bench and there were 6 people on their computers, like all separately, and they're all having like Zoom calls. I'm thinking to myself, like, one person had their own water, another person had their own sandwich, and I'm thinking they're using this place all day, and actually the atmosphere was dead. Like there wasn't like a bunch of tables where people are chatting. It was just dead because people are working. And how do you avoid falling into that trap?
I think it's something we're conscious of. We want to try and create that sort of, it's your local neighbourhood bakery that you can go and get the products that you want that you take home or sit in with. I think one of the things we look at is the sort of seat count. So we don't want to go back to the ways of table service, etc., or separate menus, because it's a lot of additional back of house space that's required. There's a lot of additional staffing requirements that are needed as well. Whereas we think that typically, the two shops that we've opened, so Ashby has seats for 11, Park Farm has seats for about 20. Park Farm, for those who are listening further afield, is Alistry, so a village just sort of north of Derby city centre. And that's probably the maximum we'd go to, and that is a big shop for us in terms of seat count. So it is something we're careful with, and we make conscious decisions when we're looking at stores as to how much space we want to allocate to seating. The flip side of that is, we also look at the back of house requirements, and also things like how can we recruit and retain shop staff. So things like, a nice staff room is really, whilst they might not be enormous, having somewhere where they can, if it's a busy shop, you're on your feet for 8 to plus hours a day, somewhere where you can, on your lunch break, take shoes off, chill out, and, have a private phone call if you need to have a private phone call, or, just get away from it.
It makes a lot of sense, and we're going to talk more about this, but I think employee happiness is such a big thing today. Well, I think it's always been significant in business, but I do think moving forward, if you want to retain and recruit, it's going to be really important. One thing that comes to mind when I was sort of doing some research is that independent bakers are pretty rare these days. They're not like they were. I think every town would have had a bakery of some sort years ago, and village. Likewise, butchers, fishmongers were the same. The British supermarket has essentially tried to muscle in on everyone's business. I think probably to some degree, fish and chips is probably one of the few that they haven't, but they have at Morrison's. But I think where they constantly see someone that's not someone, but an audience that's doing good, we're going to target that. And how do you keep evolving to stop that from creeping in? I know you can't directly, but you've got to keep making yourself relevant. And as a 105-year-old business, you've clearly learnt a thing or two about resilience. So
yeah, I think your pinch bomb, the word I was going to use is staying relevant, and that's a really important part. And I think that's where, whilst we don't copy the competition, it's important we ascertain and look at what the competition are doing, and we're tight on terms of we're understanding our own product trends, but also where the sort of slightly wider product trends are going. So things like the growth of coffee, the growth of the food to go areas. That helps us guide our product development side of the business. So, we coined this phrase, or we've started to coin this phrase of the bird's BLT, or breakfast, lunch, treat. So they're areas and times of day that we think our customers are shopping with us, and they're the meals that they're really trying to, or that's the mealtime we're trying to solve for them. So at the moment, we are very busy at lunchtime, and an area that we're looking at is how can we grow those sales in the morning day part. So if you look at competition, I'm going to use a G word that I don't like to use very often, but Greggs, the Starbucks, the Costa, they're very good at getting the customer to come in those morning day parts. So that's where we're spending a lot of time at the moment, evolving that product range. So we've and it goes back to your question of staying relevant and evolution, not revolution.
Yeah.
So we've launched a banana muffin, which is the first muffin that we tried a blueberry muffin. It didn't quite work for various reasons, both from the bakery side of things, but we saw that quite quickly with the customer. And I guess the perks with a business of our size is that we can make changes quite quickly. Some things take time, some things we can act quite quickly. So if we see a product isn't working, we can stop it, pause it, change it. And, we hope we've got a culture where everyone can speak to everyone. But a lot of it is going back to your initial question of, staying relevant, understanding the competition, but really understanding what problems we're trying to solve for the customer.
I was in Bird's Bakery in Wallerton on Good Friday. It happened completely on accident. A customer forgot to order something from our website. It's Good Friday. He says to me, "Can you bring it over?" I'm 40 minutes away, so I jump over. He goes, "Tell you what," he goes, "I'll treat you to a coffee, seeing as you brought it out to me." So where do we end up? In a Bird's. And it's really weird how these things happen. But I did notice it was very busy. It was probably 11:30 onwards, and it was busy. Just as we got there, it was quietish. They got really busy, and I think I wasn't going to have any food. I started off saying, "I'm fasting today," and I thought, actually, he said, no, you've got to have a bacon cob. I was like, okay, well, I've got to have, I've got to have a bacon cob. Which
we need more customers like that who can twist people's arms.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then it quickly became a bacon and sausage cob, so the upsell came in. But no, genuinely, I was impressed at how nice it was. Like, because obviously I've had breakfast at all of those places you've mentioned, and they're all right, they're passable. But like, what I thought was it's how fresh it was, and it was hot. A lot of the time, any food anywhere outside is lukewarm at best, and I don't know whether that's intentional or what, but it was nice. It was really hot. The coffee was great. Coffee can be hit and miss, can't it? And wherever you are. So, and it was really nice. So I was surprised that how good it was, because I've only ever had coffee in Bird's before. So it was just interesting that the quality was so good, but everyone around me seemed to be eating, and everybody seemed to be so happy. So surely. I'm not jinxing it here, but I feel like it shouldn't be too hard to sort of fill that gap in the mornings if it's that good.
And I think, well, firstly, thank you for the compliments. I'm glad we offered good service at Woolerton. That's really positive to hear. But you're right. I think I look at lots of shops, and we've got some that are new, modern, and look brilliant. You've got some that are slightly older and, need a bit of TLC. And every time when you can look at the sales and you go, the older stores may still do incredibly well. And you go, to me, that's testament to the quality of the product, that people are willing to go in there. One thing that Tim, middle brother, and I did over the last 12, 18 months is build links with three of the sort of local universities. So University of Derby, Nottingham Trent, and Leicester. And we were already sort of on this rebrand journey, but a lot of we asked them, what do you think of Bird's as a brand and a business? And a lot of them would answer, we've heard of Bird's, but don't know what you do. And that's where the idea of this new concept store came in. And with our new stores in Ashby and Park Farm, Alistry, a lot of what we're focusing on is using that window space. You look at the high-end retailers, the sofa shops of the world, who use that space so well to try and drag the customer in. That's what we've really tried to focus on, because my belief, and I believe the entire business's belief, is that once a customer does come in and try our products, that I think they would come back, because they should be able to, and we hope they'll be able to, taste the difference in quality versus the likes of the Greggs, the Costas, the Starbucks.
Am I right in thinking that nearly everything you make is all done in-house at Ascot Drive?
Everything we make is made by us. So down to the sausages, so we buy in pigs from a local farmer. It's not necessarily a picture for wider social media or marketing use.
No, I get that. Yeah.
But it's something that we're really, really proud of.
So there's a little story I could share with you. My friend wouldn't mind, he's retired now. But my flour supplier, before he retired, I mentioned Bird's. It was before the podcast. I think I was at one, and I just said I'm at a Bird's, and he goes, they frustrate me, they do. And I was like, why do they frustrate you? He goes, well, we make donut mixes, we make this, we make that. We can't get anything in there. And I was like, really? He goes, nothing. I said, why? Because they make everything from scratch. And I was like, yeah. It's pretty impressive, though, isn't it, mate? And he goes, it is. He goes, but he was torn, clearly, because from a salesperson's point of view, he wants to sell you mixes. Yeah. But at the same time, he, as a consumer, respects the fact that you made everything from scratch. And I think that's probably one of the conversations that piqued my interest in Bird's, because, again, you see a lot of people that probably let go of those values over the years because they do want to go for growth. If we look at, the G word again, Greggs, they probably a few decades ago said, you know what, guys, like, if we want to grow this thing, we can't do this and we can't do that, and and then they've had to make that value proposition within their business to say, but we want another X amount of stores, so that makes sense. Whereas you guys have probably said, well, look, as much as we like all these extra stores, well, we can't travel there anyway because the quality needs to remain constant. So everyone makes these decisions in business, but I think you can't. You can't look at a company like yours and think that's not amazing. I think that's. Like, I was telling my wife about it earlier. And I said to her, like, imagine they make everything on site. She's like, nah, everything. I was like, no, everything. And she's like, that's crazy. And I think most people that from the outside probably don't get that. They don't. No. They just don't get that at all.
And I think that I go back to the rebrand a lot, and that's really one of the other purposes is to try and tell. That's be able to tell that side of it. We've got a lot of our traditional customers who've shopped with us every day, thankfully, for the last however many number of years, which we love and we want them to continue to shop with us, and they probably know that story. But it's how can we attract that next customer in? How can we tell them that story? Because that again helps increase that the perception of value when you see the product and walk in the store, because it's all stuff that we're already doing. It's just finding a way to tell that to the customer. The word scratch is always a good one, and it's the word that we use internally ourselves as well as to how we would describe ourselves. We're not necessarily a craft. There are definitions around when you can call yourself an artisan baker, but we call ourselves a scratch baker, and that is because we make everything from scratch.
Yeah. So I guess when you're then developing a banana muffin,
it
starts right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then, to the end bit. So I guess the good thing with that is I bet you can act on feedback pretty sharpish. Because if you launch it into 61 stores and someone says, well, it's too banana-y, just for argument's sake. You
Tone it down, would you?
Turn it down a bit. And then if the opposite was true, you could then, if it works within the recipe, add a bit more. And I think this is whereas if this was a mix that was bought in from somebody else, you'd probably have to then say, okay, we need to start a development process all over again. That's going to take a few weeks to get some samples. We need to test it. How does this bake? How does that? Blah, blah, blah. And there's so many knock-on effects. Whereas if it's just, whoever's in the development team, can they just go knock up a new sample and then present it to the execs or something, or people at that level? It's fairly easy, isn't it? To some, well, I've simplified it. I don't want to use the word easy, but it's simpler, let's say.
Yeah, it allows us to have control. There's lots of different products I could call on. Our donuts is probably a very good example. How it is everything we make. The other one is I could use the caramel or the jam in this example. So the caramel, whilst we have a supplier for the caramel, is our own recipe. Mm-hmm. And made to our own specification, but likewise is our jam that would go into again a more traditional jam donut that most customers or listeners of the podcast will be familiar with. So having those unique recipes and blends as to how we want the jam to come out is really special. I remember, and one thing you might ask is what's it like growing up in a family business? When I was younger, you understand a little bit about what's going on. And I still remember the argument about the layers of pastry the pastry for the sausage rolls, and how, looking back now, now I'm involved, but sort of go to an outsider, that's probably quite an interesting or quite a funny argument or discussion to be hearing. But that's sort of part and parcel of it. But
I think they'd be equally.
That took a long time for them to resolve.
I think they'd be equally as baffled as they would immersed in it, to be honest. I think it'd be like one of those things like, from my point of view, I think I'd like to know the difference technically, because I'm a bit sad like that. But I think I could get it. Like, for me, it's exciting. Like, I walking around your place, I probably wouldn't want to leave, because I think I'd love, food creation. I think when you're into that sort of thing, it just, I don't know, especially when you're serving as many people as you're serving. And talking to a friend of mine that I supply in Derbyshire, they've got a group of shops, and he said that he goes, I see birds. Again, he had a story. He said, I used to go with my mum, and he said, but I see birds as a proper old-fashioned baker. He goes, what you buy today, you eat today, and it's probably okay for tomorrow. But he goes, but really, it's an old-fashioned baker's. It's good quality.
Yeah.
It's not made to last. It's made to eat and enjoy. And I think whereas the supermarkets to bring them into this for a moment. They've mass produced bread with the Chorleywood Stevenson process, as they call it, and I'm sometimes looking at allergens, for example, like when I see people say, oh, I eat bread and it ties me up in knots and I feel crap afterwards. I think to myself, well, have you eaten any proper bread lately? Because there is different bread. I know the word bread is like an umbrella term now, but there is different bread. And looking at all your nice bread loaves and all your buns on the shelves the other day on display, it did make me think like how lucky we'd be if we had a Birds in Atherstone. Like, and I know you said you've seen lots of comments like that, and I think we'd be so lucky because I think it'd probably make me want to eat more bread, which means I probably have to go to the gym more. Or to the gym.
And that's your next business adventure, gyms.
So I do wonder sometimes if we will see a circle come back round where people start to appreciate good quality baked bread again, rather than the mass produced stuff that sits on the shelf and in a cupboard for a week.
And it's almost like if we flip it all the way back to staying relevant and sort of part of the rebrand, what we try and do is work with lots of local suppliers, and we know how important that is to lots of customers, but particularly that sort of younger customer coming through who sustainability is is right at the forefront of why they may shop with a retailer. So that's something that we're really, really keen to tell. So whether it's from our flour supplier to our milk suppliers to the guys that we get our cream from for all our cream cakes, we try and use local suppliers where possible. But even down to things like uniform, etc. It's using local businesses where possible.
Yeah,
a bird has just flown into the window. Wow. But I think the allergen thing is, you're completely right, and hopefully, I think the customer will come back round to that.
Yeah.
Allergens themselves are what the work that is required by us now is so, and for all the right reasons, is so much higher in terms of what we have to tell the customer, how we have to show it, how we have to declare it. It costs a huge amount for a business like us each year, obviously for all the right reasons. And the amount of intolerances that people are finding out about. So again, it goes back to the sort of product development side of things, and how can we have a product for everyone? Because the two elements we always get asked about are gluten-free, which is almost impossible for us because we've got one bakery site which has a lot of gluten in it. And the other one is sort of the vegetarian and vegan side of things, where we are looking at more and more products.
Yeah, I think it's one of the. I always try to say to people, allergens aren't bad. They're just bad for people that are allergic to them. But I think what's more costly is not factoring it in and doing it wrong and making mistakes. So, you only have to look at Pret a Manger and look at, I think they've had 2 cases against them, deaths, not just cases, deaths. Like, you think, So I think a lot of the allergen changes that we've seen brought by legislation is because of Pret a Manger. So,
hence Natasha's Law.
And you think, so I think the flip side of not doing it properly is also really tricky. You've got to take it as important as you can. Like we've got we started off when the whole thing with allergens started to kick off. We had a curry sauce and a gravy mix, and then we decided to do 2 different ones. And then I thought to myself, I'm a big fan of simplicity is key. And I just, in the end, I merged them all. They became one. We basically started an allergen reduction on the ones that had wheat in, and then we ditched the gluten-free ones, and now we've got allergen-free products. And I think that way, if you can do that, obviously it's different when you've got baked goods because gluten actually has a function. So, and I think I always say this to people, it's not like making a sauce where you can use other thickeners and so on, whereas baked product, even sugar, has a really unique it's really important to the texture. So when you then develop new products, which you're sort of involved in, how do you balance innovation whilst maintaining traditional qualities? Because I guess you want to come out with something quite new and pizzazzy, but at the same time, you want to be traditional. How do you do that then?
It's a very good question, and this is so we spend a lot of time on product development, or we are doing in particularly at the moment. So we have quite a reasonably slick process, we think now, but everything still takes an incredible amount of time. We've got some incredibly skilled bakers in the bakery who we utilise and work closely with to look at various different products. And I think that's where the mix of our product development team is retail, is Leslie and I, is the bakery, and it's understanding what do the shops, what feedback are they getting from customers, what products do they want, what products do our staff think that they want, because ultimately they're 800 customers. Then we go to the product development team and we work on certain products. The piece of the puzzle which always takes the longest is scaling it up. And that's where I don't want to say we always have issues, that's not always true, but going from saying you want to make a banana muffin and you're going to do 20 for a shop, fine. As soon as you go and say you want to have 20 for 61 shops and you want to have everything else as well, it's then going into the production planning side of things as to where does that sit? Who's going to look after the machine that's helping us deposit the mix for the banana, the banana muffin with the chocolate chips, and then who's going to decorate it? So that's the piece of the puzzle, which is how can we invest in modern techniques or equipment, but still have that, that craft element that we will be using within the bakery. And then how can we market that to our customers to tell them about, we've got a new banana muffin in the shop, and then getting them to try it, because they're the next two big hurdles. Because if we went and said, we've got this brilliant new product, marketing campaigns are always an interesting one for us. If we look at it, as a business, we've never invested significantly into marketing because we've always had that really positive word of mouth story. And that's something we still believe in. So it's trying to work with the staff to engage with customers to say, have you seen that we've got a new banana muffins in today? Would you like to try one? And recently, since the turn of the year, really, we're doing a lot more product sampling. And I mean, it's not a new idea for us. We took it from Costco, who do a lot of sampling within their stores. And I mean, a company like Costco doing it, they must have success with it. So it's trying to get that customer who comes in maybe twice a week for their farmhouse loaf to say, have you tried something new, something different? Or even if it's, new customer Jamie's walked in for the first time, it can be quite intimidating walking into a bird shop when you've got that whole array or counter and you've got a busy queue or big queue behind you. It's lunchtime. We're going, what do I want? So there's a whole host of things that go into the product development side of things. And then it's how can you make that product really shine in the counter?
Yeah.
So it's something we're always looking at improving on. So if you've got any ideas,
there's nothing I could teach you. Put it that way. Like, like you guys have been in business 105 years. I've been in business since 2007. I think it's the other way around. But no, it is interesting because I love it, because you are right about that being intimidating from when you walk through. If you get swept into a queue, any queue for that matter, you don't want to be the person that is asking questions that holds back the queue. So, because, for example, in an ideal world, like we see in the movies, you'd walk in and go, hey, what's great here? Tell me, you tell me what's great. But you can't, because I always see that a queue is like you're being swept out by the tide, and you don't want to hold it back when you're not going to hold it back, because people behind you are like, come on, like it's lunchtime or whatever. But wouldn't it be great if you could just walk in and go, hey, like, what is your thing here? Like, just give me it and I'll happy to pay for it. Here's my card details.
No, I completely, it can be really intimidating. Sometimes you sit there and, our bakery shop, which is, can probably guess where it is on the front of the bakery, is a prime example of that. If you get the wrong time, we're sat in a wider industrial estate, so we get a lot of the tradesmen coming in at lunch. We can probably guess their order relatively quickly, which would be a sausage, a bacon cob, coffee, and a cake of some sort. Yeah. But if you're sat there, and sometimes I'm bad at this, of going, what do I want? Do I want a filled roll? Do I want a sandwich? And you just go, oh God, there's some pressure behind me now. So we do quite a lot of work with, or we're trying to work with the staff or shop staff in particular around customer service training. And, if a customer is waiting for a long time at lunchtime, of not just saying, sorry, for sorry for the wait. It's thank you for waiting. So those little bits of, slips of the tongue which help that customer feel like they're valued in waiting for their service, or their custom for us, and hopefully then they get the time that they need with that member of staff.
A friend of mine really emphasises that he dislikes negative words to emphasise positive things, because even sorry for the wait puts the sorry in people's minds instead of a thank you, which is a lot more, so it brightens up someone's day a bit more, especially when they're stressed because they've been in the queue for 10 minutes. So
exactly. And we know time these days is precious for customers, whether that's lunchtime and you've got half an hour to go out and get your lunch and get back to your desk, or you're out on a Saturday and you've got parents with you, you've got kid in the pram, that kind of thing. It's how can we get them to, or not necessarily just speed of service, it's knowing that person X needs a little bit more time versus person Y who wants to just pay for their coffee and go
in and out. Now, I'm both of those people on different days, and that's the other thing. How do you do that as well? So, and talking of marketing, so I've got 2 young boys, and one's 10 and one's 5, roughly, and all I know is sweet treats. They don't need marketing thrown at them at all. I mean, it's already baked into their system. If I take them into a Bird's, I know that straight away they're going to want the sweet treats. How do you go about teaching that generation about the pork pies? How do you go about teaching them about the nice bread? And so is that purely that you hope their parents and grandparents do that job for you, or have you got some ideas behind the scenes?
So I think, what do I think? I think lots of things. The pork pie is an interesting one. So that is really, if you put that next to our caramel donut, probably 2 of our most iconic, they are our 2 most iconic products, and 2 we're very proud of. The pork pie trends in general as a whole are trending downwards for whatever reason, but we're still retaining our sales, which is really positive, and again, hopefully testament to the quality of the product. The way that we try and market them is there's probably the element of, mum and dad or grandparents have introduced them to that product. But it goes back to trying to get them to sample that product. So using the shop staff to say, why don't you try a slice of the pork pie, for example. With the breads, what we try is that hopefully, that customer might come in and initially buy a sandwich or a filled roll or a sausage cob or a bacon cob, and they try that bread roll or the bread that makes up the sandwich, and actually goes, oh, you know what, that was really good. I want to get a loaf of that, which we sell by the loaf or the bag for the bread rolls, and be able to have it at the weekends when I've got friends coming around for a barbecue and I'll make sandwiches or whatever event they might have. So it's trying to get them to try the products in different ways is probably is one element we work with or continuing to work on.
Do you find that do you find that the coronation last year, do you think that helps selling the goods that you sell? Because I know for a fact we had a picnic at home, we did have a pork pie, we had lots that we were eating, and it felt very British, if that sounds right.
That does sound very right. We did very well that coronation weekend because a lot of, and it goes to other holidays like Christmas, which is still a very busy period for us. Christmas Eve in particular, people have a lot of memories of queuing round the block to try and get in and get their cakes and bread rolls, because they then know that we're closed for a few days, unfortunately, for Christmas, etc. So it gets them through that holiday period. But yeah, it's that traditional customer. It's trying to utilize those events to get them to try some of our new products. So when we see a spike in sales through a weekend, such as the coronation, if we have new products that might get customer Jamie to go back in actually on a Tuesday on a normal week, then that's a brilliant way that we try and get them to try those products in at different times of the day.
Yeah. So post-COVID, there's been, I guess, instability with ingredient costs, and on top of that, operation costs. Staffing costs have gone through the roof, and utility costs. You're running a multi-site operation with huge factory, I guess, with lots of electricity and gas probably being used. How has this been a burden on your planning?
Yeah, quite significantly. It is something that keeps you up at night. So I got a good stat because we got them through. Well, we stay on top of this stuff much more now. In particular, our electricity and our gas consumption. We sub-meter most of our equipment now in the bakery, and we monitor that on a daily, weekly basis. But within the bakery, our energy consumption reduced by 5.8% for 2023 versus 2022, but our costs increased 109%, which equated to an additional £1 million, just over £1 million in cost. So it's a really, really hard place for us to be. And I think there are various elements that we're looking at. So one is reporting and looking at production planning. So how can we be better ourselves? Is it, they're putting the oven on, they're zigzagging. So they put something on that needs to be at 250, then they go into 150 to 250 to 150. Can we do everything at 150 first while the oven's warming up and then up to 250 and then down again? So we're doing that learning, and that's continuous. Are there ovens that we don't need to use earlier in the week when it's quieter? That's, again, something we're continuing to work on in terms of how we can be operationally better. I think it's also important that, and this is something we highlight internally as well, is that there are some elements that are simply out of our control. So the cost per unit of electricity and gas is outside of our control. So we can only control what we can control. But it is a massive burden. And I think that's something that you can't go and shout to customers. Ultimately everyone, staff, customers, are having these same issues at home. So whilst we're having to put our prices up, we hope we can, they understand why we are having to do that. It's not because we're profiteering. It's simply to allow us to keep the lights on and keep running as a business. On the shop side of things, the perks we have with the bakery is we use a lot more. So we can tie ourselves into longer term contracts, which we hope we see some savings, although we don't always. Because, at the moment, it's still a bit of a gamble. Do we tie ourselves in now for 12 months? Where are energy prices going to go? With the shops, we essentially have to have 61 single contracts. So it's almost like 61 home supplies. So it's a lot of work in terms of staying on top of that, managing it, but also monitoring it and feeding it back to the shops. And we use the bakery shop quite a lot as an example in terms of we use them to play around with lots of things, whether that's how we're, displaying a product to, what happens if you turn your air conditioning down by 1 degree? What kind of impact does that have on our energy costs over that week or energy consumption over that week? And then it's trying to relay that to all our staff. So a lot of it is, internal and external communication about this wider macroeconomic issue.
And as a business, how do you go about, would you put posters in the shop saying, oh, we'll put our prices up? Or do you just leave it to the staff to sort of just play it by ear? Because I've always been a big fan of not advertising that you've had to increase prices, because I think that just upsets customers. It puts a bad taste in, it just gives them a bad taste when really all they want to do is come in and get their bread. Yeah, they might say, oh, it's gone up 20p, let's say. But what they really don't want is to be, I don't know, I feel like you're ruining their experience by telling them to some degree.
We work and communicate to our staff and ask our staff. So we work our shop operations managers and our area team who look after more shops will talk closely and with our shop managers and shop teams. And often we'll come up with scripts for different scenarios for how to handle those kind of conversations, difficult conversations that you can have with customers. But I'm in the same mindset that we don't like, we are having to put prices up. We don't want to do that for these reasons, but I don't think necessarily communicating in the store is the right way to do it. And we trust in the way that our staff can communicate with our customers to be able to explain that.
I was saying to someone yesterday that I think that businesses don't like putting up prices. And I know that sounds silly, but a part of me thinks that even when I look at myself as a business owner, if all of my costs stayed the same for ages and I didn't have to put up prices for ages, I think that would be a really nice sweet spot. Like I've got no one to upset. I don't have to sit down and recalculate things all the time. And, I don't have to make tough decisions. And I'm not that I never will in business, because I have lots of other tough decisions to make. But I just feel like if I can not have that one decision. Like, I can just focus on all the others. And I think they sort of agreed with me to some degree. They were like, you know what, that's actually quite true. And I think everyone in the supply chain would probably feel the same way, that
Yeah.
if something stayed the same for, but I know that it's also a very naive and unrealistic view, but I'm just saying, I don't think anybody likes putting up prices. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
And putting prices up can be expensive. The amount of price tickets, all the work that goes into it, and all of that. So we'd love to. And every time we look at costings, we are very conscious of trying to remain affordable to all our customers, whether that's them buying a sweet, a more affordable sweet or savoury treat, or to something that's more, for the weekends like the coronation.
I guess you don't want to kill footfall, do you? You're a volume business, and because the more customers you serve, the cheaper it is for electric per unit, and per hour, and so on and so on. So if you then lose, 5 customers an hour, that starts to make the business very expensive to run as well.
It can, yeah. It can, yeah.
One also increasing price I saw at the moment is chocolate.
We have, we've been talking about that a lot, because it's. We were listening to this, and I'm that sad person who probably listens to BBC World News in the morning, and they were talking about the droughts in Africa, which is, going to have massive impacts on lots of things, but for us, the price of chocolate. And again, it's hard. We've got we work with Calabao for all our chocolate supply, so it's really good Belgian high quality chocolate, and we just got to stay afloat to it and monitor it, and it's really, really interesting and hard.
A friend of mine used to work for them. He worked for them for 2 years, and he said to me, he goes, I've never had to learn so much about anything in order to work in that business than I have at Calabao. Yeah. And I says, really? It's just chocolate? And he goes, it's not just chocolate, he goes. And I was pretty surprised. And again, because we all just think, when we see chocolate as in consumers, we just see chocolate as what you see as a retail product, and whereas you guys see it as an ingredient, and I guess they're two very different things. Many fish and chip shops, and that's the main of my listeners here, they really hate the G word. I mean, they hate Greggs. And I guess you probably are similar to that to some degree. Maybe hate's a strong word. Yeah. But you sit, and I know you're not the same thing, or that you're similar, but you sit in the same category. What do you think to their growth over the years, let's say?
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's amazing. I think if someone asks me, what do I think of Greggs for birds? It's hard. Without sitting on the fence, I sort of think they are a competitor, but they aren't.
Yeah.
But you have to admire what they have built over the years, and the brand loyalty that they have built with their customer base is phenomenal. So yeah, it's one that we look for on the high street, but we're not too worried about sitting next to them. If we look at Ashby, we sit between a Greggs and a Costa. Actually, for us, that's worked quite nicely, because that's where the customer is shopping for that product mix already. So how can we get them to come in our door instead of the Greggs or the Costa? But it's an interesting one, because if we looked at a week, 10 days ago, you may remember the article about Greggs' till system. Mm-hmm. Going down for a couple of hours. We saw a slight increase in sales, but nothing that everyone thought let's get more product out. So that shows that we got quite a different customer base. Not that we don't want to get more customers in the door who are the Greggs customer, and I think we can do that, and how we do that I think we've spoken about earlier. But they're a phenomenal business to watch.
And I realise that there's another one where you're across the road from them as well, and that, well, not even a road, it's across the walk, and it's in Tamworth. And literally, and I was sort of surprised by that, and I thought to myself, again, like you, I sort of stood there one day just thinking about it. I was picking my son up from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I just thought to myself, they must have a different customer base for them to be across the road from each other. Yes, they sell similar products, or at least products that look similar on a shelf, and they're called the same thing. But in my mind, the quality level is different. After being in both of them, they are very different. but the price point is slightly different as well.
Yeah.
But also, I did not find birds expensive at all. If anything, I was going to say earlier, when I had that bacon and sausage cob, it was great value. But I think that where they've probably done well is because they have kept their prices on the low end of the spectrum. They've probably kept that volume just knocking through, and it's really easy for them to build appreciation from customers because they are on the cheaper end of the market. And and if you're on the cheaper end of the market, and I'm not suggesting that they're crap, I'm just saying if you are on the cheaper end of the market, customers are less likely to complain. They're less likely to have a whinge for waiting 5 minutes in a queue. You've just got a little bit more customer forgiveness. Whereas if you are on the pricier end, or even the perceived pricier end of the market, customers will hold you to a higher standard. All of a sudden, you're 50p more for something, they're going to be like, 1 minute, this wasn't perfect. And you have the ability to ruin their day. Whereas I don't think that's quite true if you have a crap sausage roll at Greg's one day, without being rude. Like, if on the off chance you have a fairly mediocre product one day, I don't think that's going to upset many people because they're going to look at it and say, well, it cost me, I don't know, I'm just guessing, £1.50. So I think, so the trickier thing is when you are of the higher quality and you command a higher price, let's say, because of all of the inputs that we've discussed here today, that sort of puts you on, if you do have a bad day, you're probably going to be punished for it a little bit more.
And I think that goes back to everything. So when we were looking at like the rebrand, a lot of it is that I also, it's easy for me to say, I think we're well priced for the quality that goes into the product. I think if people understood how we make all our products, that perception of value is there and we're well priced. Particularly if we look at bakeries wider than just the East Midlands, we're very competitively priced. But I think for me, it's more than just the price point. It's that experience that a customer wants nowadays when they go into a shop. It's more than just, I want to go and get a good product. It's, how am I served? What does the store look like when I go in? Does it look, there's the basics of, does it look clean, tidy, presentable? But do I feel like I'm being treated when I now walk into a shop? And those values are something that we've pushed right to the top of our agenda with refits. We're doing a mixture of full refits, which are very expensive, and some mini refits where it's how can we take the learnings from the 2 shops that we've opened so far this year and try and implement quicker.
Yeah. And with you implementing more, and we're going to go into this now, actually, let's go into it. And you're implementing more digital infrastructure. So, and you mentioned, was it Just Eat and Deliveroo?
Uber Eats.
Uber Eats, yeah. And also you've got an online website where people can order items to be delivered to home. I guess it's more important to make that interaction just as seamless and good quality because you're now a step removed, especially if you're using an aggregator. So what sort of thoughts have you had about going into that and doing that correctly?
So it's a really good question. With Just Eat and Uber Eats, it's a bit harder because they're platforms that are outside of our control. What we have done a lot of work with, though, with those, on our own side, which we then share with them, is boost that product photography. So we've reshot a lot of our products that are shown on that website. It's some of the small details. So the shadow on the filled roll is the same on every product when you're scrolling down. So when a customer is looking at it on their phone, they go, it doesn't look odd. That's one thing we've looked at with Just Eat and Uber Eats. In terms of our own side of things, what we can control with the website is we rebuilt the website as well as part of the rebranding. And the reasons for that were the old website was of an age where it was implemented about 2001. Essentially, when the web was the World Wide Web was taking off. And they put it in place because they were told you need to have a website. But it never really evolved and developed with that. So the website itself is now also got the same principles as the in-store experience, that we want it to be quality. We want it to be easy to click through. We want customers, it makes sense as to why you're being able to click through to different pages. We also find that it's a great way for, we've got our, everyone has a story to tell submission page. So it's great for us to share some of those nostalgic stories that customers and staff do have. And on the digital side of things, we offer what we call our Birds by Post offering, which was really founded through COVID as to how we can stay in touch with customers who are slightly further away. And that is growing slowly, and we're learning every day with that. We're still convinced that the lady who looks after that element of the website is a lady called Chloe. Her mum lives down in Devon, and she's got a Birds home delivery tote bag. And interestingly, out of the UK, Devon is where we get most of our orders from. So we're still convinced that it's her walking around Devon High Street.
I mean,
but it's like with that side of it, we're looking a lot into the sort of the packaging and making it feel that premium product that when you open that box up at home, wherever you are or whoever you're sending it to, they go, wow.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. One of the things that, again, this is sort of a sort of legal accounting question more than anything, I guess, is are you sort of up to speed with like the VAT issue on sort of like remember the Pastygate? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
So a lot of, again, hot food vendors, say fish and chip shops and so on, they see like an intrinsic unfairness, and the fact that some of your baked goods that have cooled somewhat, if they have by the time they're sold, collect zero VAT, whereas hot food has VAT. What's your thought behind the process? What do you think that's an important thing to stick by, or do you think that you could work either way around it?
I must admit, I don't necessarily have an opinion on this. Okay. I completely see it, and I completely understand the issues around the topic. And I remember when the Pastygate came in, or tax came in, the business was going to go down the route of not keeping products warm. So, our sausage rolls, pasties, etc. So bake them off and allow them to go cool so you don't have to charge VAT. Whereas actually what we found is that our customers wanted that product hot. So to do that, we obviously had to charge VAT, but they're happy to do so. So they get that product, they pay slightly more for it, but they get a product that they want.
It does seem like that, and this is why I'm starting to think, I wonder if the whole debate is ready for change, because I think consumers do actually want it hot. You see,
yes.
I noticed that Greggs' ambient section seems to be shrinking over the years, whereas their hot section seems to be growing. Their hot held section seems to be growing. Obviously, you guys have had hot food, whether it's to sit in or to go. And and I guess everyone else is sort of doing their own thing, but it feels like to me that consumers are fine paying for something hot. They want it hot. Yeah. And I think when I look at a lot of comments on Greg's social media, you actually see they get more complaints for having ambient food than they do hot food. So I wonder if this argument is probably going to go away at some point, because everyone just thinks, let's just have hot food.
We've always just tried to stick by what does the customer want, and then we'll reflect the price accordingly. So we do offer sausage rolls and pasties that have been baked off in the shop, but are kept in the back till they are cool, so you can buy it cold if you want. We've got some shops who remarkably sell a lot more of those, and I don't think it's necessarily the price. I think that's the product that they would prefer to buy. Yeah. So that's how we try and adapt.
See, personally, I get the argument, the unfairness, the intrinsic unfairness between product A and product B. However, the products are still different. So a sausage roll from Greggs is still, I don't know, let's say it's 120. I'm guessing, completely fluffing this. But let's say it's 120. And then let's say it's 140, 145 with VAT. A meal at a fish and chip shop or another takeaway is in the £6 upwards, especially at lunchtime. I'm just picking a lunchtime product. So they're very different categories, in my opinion. So I don't think it's a clear-cut debate in that respect, because the products are so different.
I would agree.
So an interesting thing I wanted to go down towards the end of the podcast is if the founders could see Birds today.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you guys probably don't think like this. Maybe you do when you're feeling a bit sort of nostalgic. But what do you think they'd be? Would they be surprised by what they see? Do you think?
Oh God. So you'd hope they would be slightly surprised, because times may have changed since the 1920s, etc. I'd hope that they're proud of the way that their heritage is being upheld, and the way that we're still delivering products fresh every day as they did all the way back then. They're the if if anyone asks me about the pillars of the business, we have four, but the two that really stand out are quality and freshness. If you'd asked any, even if we hadn't called them the pillars of the business historically, if you ask the previous founding brothers or members, men and women, they would stick by quality and freshness of the two that stand out. So we're still abiding by those principles. So I'd hope they'd be proud of that.
Yeah, you think so? Do you think that when because it's easy to look back, I guess, but looking forward, I wonder if they could see past their immediate successors. Like, because you're never going to think, well, my grandkids may do this. You may think my sons or my daughters may do this, but to think my grandkids and then to think my great-grandkids and great-grandkids, like that starts to become like, you'd almost think after your sons and daughters, the wheels may fall off a little bit. So clearly, they built someone in the business, and I hope you can tell me who it was, someone built a very solid foundation for other people to want to carry on going into that business.
I think they've all. I think there's a lot of focus on the control measures. So from a financial perspective, we're in a really, really a positive standing in terms of we know what is happening on a day-to-day basis across the business. And for me, that's where the business, what the foundations upon which we stand. The business, yes, has changed and will continue to change and develop just through passing of time, and that's exciting, and that's the exciting part to drive and be involved with. But it always goes back to the basics of product reconciliation, cash reconciliation, all of those, the bread and butters for us, we're on top of. So I think that's it's not necessarily a motto, it's something that's just passed on, and it's we've got very good systems in place to allow us to do that.
Who in your business has been like a source of inspiration or mentorship, let's say, whether it's inside of Birds or outside of Birds?
To me personally, who's a source of mentorship? I knew this question was going to come up, and I'm still pondering what the answer is, because it's very easy to say, Dad, his brothers were great mentors. They were, and they were great drivers for this, installing this quality and freshness at the heart. I think, you've got to look at, I have got some very good mentors from a wider array. So I talked to a guy who runs a furniture business, and I find him really, really interesting to talk to and listen to, because he's been on a similar journey, albeit a different sector. And we speak a lot about the importance of customers, the importance of customers' wants, the importance of brand. And it's how can we, and it goes right back to what we were talking about at the start in terms of how can we continue to stay relevant on the high street when there's increasing competition. So I would say he's probably one of the biggest mentors, albeit he probably doesn't know it.
He may do. And how do you, I've worked in a family business, not of that scale, a very small scale, and it's stressful, but it's also really beneficial to some degree. How do you all sort of manage to sort of grow the business and have time away as well, and not let the business consume your home life at the same time?
Yeah, it's something and I'm sure you would have seen this as well. We have to actively find ways to not talk about it, because we're all very good at just going into work chat, which luckily with various partners, etc., we're able to talk about other things other than just work all the time. But it is something that we continue to get better at and be able to switch off from. Mental health is something that is very rife, and something we're all aware of, and it's we need to have that nice balance between work and life, because also being able to switch off gives you, I find, ability to think outside the box and ability to think about the wider picture, rather than always being stuck down in the nitty gritty of what's going on within the business.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, 100%. Mate, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I really have. Have I forgotten to ask you anything? Or is there something you'd like to tell us that maybe I haven't asked the question to?
Oh, yeah, there we go. No, I don't think. I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. This is the first time as a business we've really been involved in podcasts. So I just want to thank you for inviting me on to be able to tell you and all your listeners a little bit about Birds Bakery, our story, who we are and where we want to go.
I'm so grateful that you've come on. And one thing I want to say is that you've, as a family, as a business, you seem to have captured the trust of your customers and clearly your employees, because they won't be there for this long. And I think that is so amazing to see a business over so many generations to keep doing the same thing. Actually, in actual fact, I'm jealous because you're the business that I aspire to be. And so that is, well done from me.
Thank you ever so much. We really appreciate that.
And thank you for your time today, Jamie.
Likewise, thank you.
I enjoyed chatting to Jamie. In the coming months, I hope to be upping my game and talking to some different business people and retailers. I've visited a few Birds bakeries now, and I won't lie, their food is brilliant. But not only that, their coffee leaves a lot of high street coffee shops for dead. So, if you're local to one, pop in. But if you're not, and you fancy a treat, order a bundle off their website. Everything is made fresh to order. If you want to keep in the loop with what we're doing at Ceres, then you should be following us on social media. But to get information delivered directly to your inbox and special offers, join our mailing list. The link will be in the episode show notes. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and on social media, because if you like this episode, chances are others will like it too. And if you have a moment, do us a favour and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your favourite podcast player.